So have you ever heard of the term reverse engineering?
Can't say that I have, no.
Okay, it's sort of a techie thing where instead of making a product, what you do is you take an existing product, and to find out how it's made, you take it apart with the idea of making something similar.
Okay, that's cool.
So here's a great example of this. Jeff Varasano is a software engineer, and he lives in Atlanta, and he's totally in love with this pizza he gets from this New York City pizza joint. It's called Patsy's. So he's worked and worked to discover the recipe. Now, Jeff, first, can you tell us about the pizzas from Patsy's? What makes them so darn good?
Oh, God, they're so light. Have you ever been to New York at all?
Yes.
It's just so different. Like, I moved down here to Atlanta about, 7 or 8 years ago, and the pizza down here is very thick, and it's gummy, and it's always covered in cornmeal. It's just not authentic. It's just not like it was done in New York, and certainly not like it was done in Naples years ago. The sauce is very light. The cheese is always very fresh. It's really just unlike anything you've ever had, if you got it right.
If you get it right. So,
right.
And that's always the key. So
Right.
Why didn't you just ask the guys at Patsy's for the recipe?
Even if you have the recipe, it's still just hard to do. It's hard to do in a home oven. I mean, they have a brick oven that they fire up with coal to over 800 degrees. They cook a pie in 2 minutes. If you try and cook one in your home oven at 500 degrees, it's going to take like 20 minutes. It's a totally different, the whole chemistry of it is totally different. It just still wouldn't come out.
Right. So, but did you ask them for the recipe?
I didn't ask them for the recipe. A lot of these places are really secretive because there's like a little competition that goes on in New York between all these places, and they all have these reputations, and they're always trying to franchise. But what I did do is I bought one of their doughs. I told them I was going to make a calzone, and I bought a dough. And from that, I've been actually breeding their sourdough culture, their yeast. Most of these places don't use the kind of yeast that you would buy in the supermarket. They're using something like different or special, and you can just keep that going just like you would, just anything in your garden. You just kind of keep feeding it, and it'll just keep growing forever.
I knew a man who had a 25-year-old bit of sourdough that he'd been cooking with for that whole time.
Yeah, absolutely. These things will last forever. I mean, for example, the San Francisco sourdough culture that people talk about, goes back to the first 49er gold miners.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's 1849 we're talking about.
That's right.
So tell me about the whole process then. How do you actually reverse engineer a pizza?
You just keep trying, I think, until you get it right. I mean, there's a lot of recipes online. Like if you go to Google and you just type in pizza recipe, there's about 100 recipes will come up. Unfortunately, most of them they're very simplistic and they're just not right. You really you have to have a lot of patience, and you just have to be willing to try a lot of different things. I mean, if it's one thing that I'm kind of known for, it's kind of looking at problems like a little bit differently than a lot of people do. So even though, like for example, I might get 100 recipes that might all in unison say to do it one way, I don't necessarily believe that, or I will just try like the opposite way. And that really gets me a lot of distance in both my software engineering and in the pizza, and then really any other kind of engineering effort that I attempt.
They're so similar, the pizza engineering and the software. So how did you look at things differently? What did you do to find out the secret?
Like I said, I really just tried everything. Let me give you an example of one thing that's like very different than what you'll see in pretty much every recipe that you'll see online. Almost all the recipes will say that you're starting with your dry ingredients first, and then you're adding the water back to it. And no matter what you do, just don't do that. No matter what recipe you're trying, you really have to do it the opposite way. You've got to start with the water and just gradually add the flour, and you just can't add so much. Let me give you an example. If you're dealing with a huge mixer, let's say you have a huge commercial mixer and you're a dough maker, and you've got one of these things that'll hold 100 pounds of dough. That dough is so heavy that dough hook will go through the dough no matter what. The dough hook will go through it, the dough will fall off the hook, and then the dough is really being worked because the dough is so heavy that it falls off that hook. But if you're dealing in a little home mixer, that dough is so dry and sticky because you started with the dry ingredients first. It's so dry that it'll just stick to the hook, and then it'll just spin around the machine, and it just never, ever gets mixed. And so if you start with the wet ingredients and just gradually add the flour, most of the time it's working. It's really a batter. It's gradually getting drier and drier as you add the flour very slowly. Now the home machine, even though it's very different than the commercial mixer, can actually do what it was originally intended to do. And this is an example of where these things just don't scale, and so people just try and keep everything the way it was. Even if I'd asked the guy at Patsy's, for example, how to do this, his answer may not have applied to what I was doing at home. It wouldn't have applied to my oven. It wouldn't have applied to my mixer, etc.
Well, given that you didn't have an oven that fires to 800 degrees and you don't have a commercial mixer, how close was your finished product to the Patsy's Pizza?
Well, I do have an oven that will get to 800 degrees, and this is the reason I originally did not really promote my website, because I just thought eventually I would be sued for this. But what I did was I clipped off the lock on my cleaning cycle on my oven. So in a cleaning cycle, these ovens will hit 1,000 degrees no problem if you've got a home oven, because they clean. That's how they clean. They clean by essentially incinerating the inside. So if you clip off the lock, then you can have an 800-degree oven at home. Don't call or sue me.
Yeah, don't tell your insurance company about that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm doing a great job of keeping that secret right now.
Yeah, obviously. And did it taste like Patsy's when it came out of your oven?
Not the first 100 times. But now it really does. Now it's exactly like it. I mean, I've really got the process down at this point.
What kind of pizza are we talking about here?
We're talking about that really thin crust pizza where it's just burnt just a little bit, just like charred on the outside. And anybody can take a look. Can I just give my website real quick?
Yeah.
It's think2020.com/pizza.
But is it a pepperoni pizza, or does it matter?
It's a great question. Down here in Atlanta, everyone finds out that I make pizza. The first question they ask is, what do you put on your pizza? They're looking for me to say that, that I make a goat cheese, arugula salad pizza or something. But the truth is that in New York, it's really all about the standard pizza. It's all about the standard, regular sauce and cheese pizza, because it's so good, you really wouldn't want to muck it up with all these extra ingredients. Of course, I do a bunch of different varieties. I occasionally make a clam pie with garlic and oregano. I occasionally make a pepperoni or a sausage or a mushrooms. But basically, the way to judge any sort of pizza is to try what's called the standard margherita, which is sauce, cheese, and basil.
Wow.
Classic. You can't go wrong. Well, I think the Freestyle team might have to plan a trip to Atlanta just to try some of this. Yeah, me too. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Varasano lives in Atlanta, and we'll put a link to the recipe on our website. Just go to cbc.ca/freestyle and click on the links.